The air was heavy, silent, until David Parker said, "Why can't I log in?" His fingers tapped the keyboard, rejected by the system he had entered every day for 12 years. Fear coiled in his chest, strangling reason. The computer flashed red text, cold and merciless, access denied. His breath quickened as he muttered, "This isn't possible." Behind him, the hum of office chatter dulled to a distant static, as though the building itself recoiled. He glanced at his phone. Emails vanished, files wiped, his identity erased in an instant. David's badge beeped once, then died at the turnstile, locking him inside and out at the same time. Panic flared. He whispered, "They know." His screen flickered one last time, an open folder exposing names, numbers, fraud, marked bold in subject lines. His own name tangled in the thread. His hands trembled as he reached for a printout, but the printer clicked off mid-page, its tray spitting a half-born sheet like a severed confession. Shadows seemed to grow in corners. Colleagues avoided his eyes, their whispers sharp, rehearsed, pretending not to see. Every step closer to the exit tightened the noose. He touched the badge again. Dead, plastic. David swallowed hard. He said, "It's starting." David whispered, "Someone erased me." The thought gnawed at his bones as he sank into his chair. His reflection on the dark monitor felt like a stranger staring back. Colleagues whispered near the break room. Sarah Miller said, "Keep your head down." He heard it. They thought he was deaf, but their words cut sharper than blades. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. No message. He silenced it with a trembling thumb, but dread stayed. The half-printed page weighed heavy in his pocket, proof that refused to be ignored. He muttered, "They're closing in." Every corner of the office became hostile ground. David adjusted his tie, but it strangled him tighter than the company's grip. His vision blurred. He shook his head and forced breath, muttering, "Not yet. Not like this." The silence was suffocating. David's eyes darted toward his computer, dark as a grave. He thought of his daughter waiting at home. His pulse quickened, sweat tracing his temple. He muttered, "I can't leave empty-handed." He yanked open his drawer, pulled out a notepad, and scrawled numbers before they vanished from his memory. His pen tore into the paper with urgency. A shadow passed his desk. He froze. "Mark Lewis said, working late?" The question dripped with menace disguised as casual tone. David's throat dried. He forced a nod, his heart pounding, his script scribbles a lifeline against oblivion. David's chair squeaked as he stood, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the hollow office. He slipped the notepad into his jacket. His eyes met Mark Lewis for a fraction too long. Mark's smirk faltered, replaced by a glare colder than steel. David said, "Just finishing up." The lie cracked in his throat. He moved toward the stairwell, footsteps quickening. Each step seemed to chase him. Behind him, Mark's voice rang, "Careful what you write down." The words clung to him like chains as he pushed through the door. Inside the stairwell, the walls closed in. David's breath echoed. He descended quickly, each step louder than his pulse. He muttered, "They're watching." He imagined cameras in corners, microphones in walls. His phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. He didn't answer. He gripped the railing so tightly, his knuckles whitened. He whispered, "They want to erase me." At the landing, the emergency exit light flickered weakly, casting red shadows. He paused, heart hammering, before pushing the door to the parking lot. The night air hit him cold, sharp, almost freeing, but the fear clung to his chest like a shadow that wouldn't break. David Parker sat in his car, engine off, staring at the faint reflection of himself in the windshield. His chest rose unevenly as he whispered, "I can't let them see me broken." His phone buzzed. A photo of his daughter, Emily, glowed on the lock screen. He exhaled, gripping the wheel until his knuckles whitened. At home, the apartment felt smaller than usual, filled with unspoken tension. Emily Parker said, "Daddy, you're late again." He forced a smile, replying, I know, sweetheart. I'm here now. His wife Laura Parker looked at him, her eyes sharp with worry. She asked, "What happened at work?" He hesitated, words trapped in his throat. He muttered, "Just a long day." The lie tasted bitter. Laura's gaze lingered, sensing truth beneath silence. Emily hugged him, grounding him with warmth he felt slipping away. He whispered into her hair, "I'll protect you." Yet his pulse betrayed him, pounding with the weight of secrets pressing in. Dinner sat half-eaten on the table. The clink of silverware echoed like gunfire. Laura Parker said, "You're hiding something." David's fork slipped, scraping the plate. He replied, "I'm just tired." His voice cracked under pressure. Emily Parker chattered about school, her words a fragile shield against tension. David forced a nod, yet his eyes never met Laura's. He thought of the files erased, the badge dead, the whispers at work. His gut twisted with the weight of silence. Laura slammed her glass down, liquid spilling, her patience thinning. She hissed, "Don't bring danger into this house." David's hands tightened around his fork, shaking. He whispered, "I never wanted this." But he knew choice was an illusion. Emily looked between them, sensing storms she couldn't name. The family dinner table had become another battlefield, where truth was the enemy and silence the armor. Later that night, David sat alone in the living room, the glow of the TV flickering without sound. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands pressed to his face. Laura Parker appeared in the doorway, whispering, "I can't lose everything because of this." He lifted his head slowly, eyes bloodshot, muttering, "I can't walk away." Silence hung thicker than smoke. Laura stepped closer, tears brimming but held back. She asked, "Is it worth our safety?" He clenched his fists, replying, "It's bigger than us." Her expression broke between anger and despair. She turned away, retreating to the bedroom. David sat frozen, shadows of the television casting fractured light on his face. He whispered to himself, "I won't let them bury me." The words carried more desperation than conviction, but in the silence they became his only anchor. Sleep evaded David. The apartment lay silent, but his mind roared. He walked quietly into Emily's room, watching her sleep. Her small breath steadied him. He whispered, "I'll keep you safe." The words felt like a fragile prayer. His phone vibrated in his pocket again, the same unknown number glowing on screen. He declined it, jaw tight. Behind him, Laura stood in the hallway, arms crossed, whispering, "You're scaring us." He turned, shadows carving his face into sharper lines. He said, "I can't quit now." She stepped closer, pleading, "Then at least don't drag us down with you." He looked back at Emily, curled in blankets, innocence untouched by betrayal. His chest tightened with a mix of love and guilt. He muttered, "They've already dragged us in." Silence consumed the house, but danger hummed louder in his veins. Dawn broke through thin curtains, spilling gray light across the apartment. David sat at the kitchen table, pen in hand, scribbling on his notepad with shaking urgency. Laura Parker entered, silent, her eyes swollen from a night of tears. She poured coffee without a word. "David," said softly, "if something happens to me, this can't disappear." She looked at the notepad, then at him, her lips pressed tight. Emily shuffled in, rubbing her eyes, unaware of the storm. She climbed onto his lap, hugging him tight. He held her close, breathing in her innocence like oxygen. Laura whispered, "You're not alone, but you're breaking us." David kissed Emily's hair, whispering, "I'll make this right." Yet his trembling hand betrayed the dread he carried. An anchor weighted with both love and terror. David Parker sat at his cubicle, the office buzzing with artificial calm. He typed furiously, recreating numbers from memory before they vanished. Sweat dampened his shirt collar. Sarah Miller leaned close and whispered, "You should stop before they stop you." He froze, heart pounding. He muttered, "I can't." She glanced nervously around, then walked away quickly, as if guilty by proximity. His screen flickered again, Emails gone. David scribbled figures onto his notepad, hand shaking. A shadow loomed behind him. Mark Lewis said, working hard. "Parker?" The mockery in his voice cut deep. David forced a stiff nod, jaw tight, eyes locked on the page. The office seemed to shrink, the hum of printers and keyboards blending into a suffocating chorus. Every keystroke felt like a countdown. He whispered under his breath, "They want to erase me." David hurried into the records room, a dim archive of steel cabinets and stale air. He yanked open a drawer, searching for invoices. His pulse thudded louder than the creak of metal. He pulled a file, missing pages. He muttered, "They're stripping it clean." Behind him, footsteps echoed. He shoved the folder back, slipping his notepad into his jacket. A door creaked open. Mark Lewis' voice drifted in. "Curiosity is dangerous." David stiffened, body rigid, eyes darting for escape. He whispered, "Not today." He moved toward the side door, his steps careful, his breath shallow. The silence was broken only by the shuffle of Mark's shoes on tile. David slipped out, clutching the notepad like it was oxygen. His chest ached, but his resolve hardened. David sat in his car during lunch break, parking lot nearly empty, clouds heavy overhead. He opened his notepad, scanning frantic scribbles. His phone buzzed again, unknown number flashing. He ignored it, muttering, "Not yet." He dialed a contact instead. A voice answered. Julia Grant said, "You better not be calling me from work." His grip tightened on the phone. He whispered, "They've erased everything. I have scraps left." Julia's tone sharpened, "Then hide them. They'll come for you first." His stomach twisted. He muttered, "I can't let them bury it." Silence stretched before Julia replied, "Then don't get caught." He hung up, staring at his reflection in the rearview mirror. His own eyes looked like those of a stranger, hollowed by fear. Back in the office, David approached the break room, hoping for a moment of calm. But silence fell as he entered. Conversations froze, eyes dropped. He poured coffee, hands shaking. Behind him, whispers resumed. A colleague muttered, "He's done for." Another said, "Don't get involved." David's throat burned. He turned, locking eyes with Sarah Miller, who quickly looked away. He said softly, "Cowards." Mark Lewis appeared at the doorway, arms crossed, grin sharp. He said, "Everyone knows when it's time to walk away." The room felt poisoned, filled with silence sharper than words. David set the coffee down untouched and left, his back prickling with every gaze he couldn't escape. That night, David sat at his kitchen table, the notepad spread wide, pen moving furiously. Laura Parker said, "You're obsessed." Her voice cracked with exhaustion. He snapped back, "I'm fighting for the truth." She replied sharply, "And losing us in the process." Emily shuffled sleepily into the room, rubbing her eyes. She asked, "Why are you fighting, Daddy?" David froze, heart clenching. He knelt by her chair whispering, "Because lies hurt people." Laura's eyes filled with tears, torn between anger and love. She whispered, "And lies will destroy us too." David looked at them both, realizing the cost was no longer just his to bear. His pen dropped, the silence heavier than any evidence. David Parker waited in the empty parking lot, dusk bleeding across the sky. Julia Grant stepped out of her car, folder in hand. She whispered, "You shouldn't have called me." His chest tightened. He muttered, "You're the only one I trust." Her eyes flickered uneasily as she handed him the folder. "Half of this is already gone," she said, voice low. He flipped through the pages, his heart sinking as he saw blank sections where evidence should be. He whispered, "They're ahead of me." Julia avoided his gaze, her silence louder than any admission. David said, "You knew." She swallowed, eyes glassy, but said nothing. The weight of betrayal pressed down on him, heavier than the folder in his hands. Inside his car, David flipped through the folder again, knuckles pale on the steering wheel. Most of the evidence was missing. He muttered, "They've gutted it." His phone buzzed, a new message flashing. "We warned you." His stomach dropped. Julia's reflection in the window lingered as she walked away without a word. David whispered, "She's with them." Rage and fear twisted together. He gripped the folder tightly, each page a reminder of trust shattered. His eyes burned as he muttered, "I'm alone in this." But he knew the fight wasn't over. It had only become more dangerous. At the office the next morning, David approached Sarah Miller, desperation in his eyes. He whispered, "Julia gave me nothing. It's worse than I thought." Sarah glanced around nervously before replying, "Julia's been with management for months." His breath caught like a blade in his lungs. He asked, "You knew?" She shook her head, whispering, "We all knew. We just hoped you'd quit before they destroyed you." David's chest heaved. He muttered, "They're not just covering fraud, they're feeding me lies." Sarah's expression collapsed into pity, but she stepped back, distancing herself. The room seemed colder, every shadow now a threat. David sat in the records room again, clutching his notepad like a lifeline. He whispered, "Every lead is poisoned." The silence pressed down until a voice broke it. Mark Lewis stepped inside, smirk sharp as glass. He said, "Did you really think Julia wasn't one of us?" David's breath hitched. His grip tightened on the notepad. Mark leaned closer, whispering, "You've been writing their script." The words hollowed him. He muttered, "No." Mark smiled wider, stepping back, leaving David with silence heavier than the truth itself. That night, David sat at home, his hands trembling as he told Laura Parker, "Julia betrayed me. They're ahead of me at every turn." Laura's face fell, her voice breaking, "Then stop before they destroy us too." Emily walked in with her toy, looking up at them. She asked, "Why are you crying?" David pulled her close, whispering, "Because some people hurt others to protect themselves." Laura wiped her tears, whispering, "And some drag their families down with them." The silence that followed cut deeper than words. David stood outside the courthouse, folder clutched to his chest. Rain fell in sheets, soaking him through. He whispered, "No more hiding." Laura Parker said, "If you do this, we can't go back." He nodded, voice firm, "I already crossed that line." Each step toward the door felt heavier than chains. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside him. His reflection in the glass doors looked like a ghost, pale and hollow. He said softly, "It ends here." Inside the courtroom, the air was suffocating with silence. David sat at the witness stand, hands gripping papers. The judge said, "You may begin." He swallowed hard, then spoke, "This company has buried the truth for years." Gasps echoed faintly. Across the room, Mark Lewis smirked, arms crossed, exuding quiet confidence. David's voice trembled, but grew stronger. He said, "They erased files, silenced witnesses, and destroyed lives." The room shifted, tension vibrating in every breath. David spread his notes, voice breaking but unyielding. He said, "I have records they tried to erase." He held up the half-printed page like a battle flag. Gasps filled the courtroom. Mark Lewis leaned forward, eyes sharp, his smirk fading for the first time. Laura Parker sat in the gallery, tears in her eyes. She whispered, "He did it." David's chest heaved, each word pushing him closer to ruin or salvation. The defense attorney slammed the table, shouting, "This is circumstantial." David shot back, "It's the truth, and you can't bury it anymore." His voice thundered, echoing across the chamber. The judge pounded the gavel for order. Mark Lewis glared, eyes burning with fury. David's hands shook as he whispered, "I'm not afraid of you anymore." His words pierced through the noise like a blade. As silence fell, David leaned into the microphone, voice breaking but strong. He said, "I may lose everything, but I won't lose my name." Laura Parker clasped her hands tightly, whispering, "Hold on." Emily Parker's drawing slipped from David's folder onto the stand, a fragile reminder of what he was fighting for. He picked it up, eyes wet, and whispered, "This is why." The courtroom watched in silence as his truth cut through the walls built to silence him. The courtroom emptied slowly, whispers fading into echoes. David Parker sat slumped on the bench, folder loose in his grip. Laura Parker touched his shoulder gently, whispering, "It's over." He shook his head, voice low, "No, it's only just begun." Outside, reporters pressed against the glass, flashes of cameras cutting through the silence. David muttered, "They'll spin it, twist it, bury me again." Laura leaned closer, eyes wet, "But you spoke, and that can't be erased." For the first time in weeks, David allowed himself a shaky breath, though dread lingered like smoke. Outside the courthouse, the storm had cleared, leaving puddles reflecting harsh lights. Reporters swarmed, microphones thrust forward. David raised his hand, whispering to Laura, "I have to." He faced the crowd, voice steady despite exhaustion. The truth belongs to everyone, not just those who bury it. Questions erupted like gunfire, but he ignored them, walking through the sea of flashes. Laura and Emily Parker trailed behind, Laura holding Emily's hand tight. His family walked in silence, caught in the storm of exposure he had unleashed. Days later, David sat alone in his apartment, blinds drawn, TV flickering with news anchors debating his case. Some called him a hero, others a traitor. He muttered, "They'll never see the whole truth." His notepad lay on the table, covered in scribbles, half burned by cigarettes. Laura entered quietly, setting coffee before him. She said softly, "You're still here, that matters." He looked up, shadows under his eyes deep, whispering, "But at what cost?" Emily's laughter echoed faintly from her room, a fragile sound against the static of the news. In the following week, the corporation issued a statement denying everything. David watched the press conference from home. Mark Lewis stood at the podium, polished, charismatic, declaring these accusations are baseless. David clenched his fists, whispering, "Lies, stacked on lies." Laura muttered, "They're still winning." David shook his head, eyes narrowing, "Not forever. Truth has cracks to crawl through." His face hardened, no longer just the face of a frightened employee, but of someone who had nothing left to lose. Late at night, David sat on the balcony, city lights stretching beyond. Emily's drawing rested on the table, its crayon colors bright against the night. He whispered, "They can erase files, but not this." Laura joined him, wrapping a blanket over his shoulders. She said, "We may lose everything, but we still have us." David looked at her, eyes softening. He muttered, "That's enough to keep fighting." The city hummed beneath them, indifferent, but his resolve now lived in quiet defiance. David Parker sat at his desk late at night, the apartment silent, except for the hum of the city outside. He held Emily's crayon drawing in one hand and the half-printed page in the other. He whispered, "One shows hope, the other their rot." His phone buzzed with another blocked call, but he didn't answer. Laura Parker stepped into the room quietly, whispering, "They'll never stop coming for you." He turned slowly, exhaustion etched deep in his face. He muttered, "Then I'll never stop fighting." The determination in his eyes was a flame refusing to die, even as everything else around him burned to ash. The next morning, David walked Emily to school. The sun was bright but felt heavy on his shoulders. Emily said, "Daddy, are you better now?" He forced a smile, replying, "I'm trying." She handed him a folded note and whispered, "For you." When she skipped into the building, David unfolded it. Inside was her drawing of their family holding hands. His throat tightened as he whispered, "She believes in me, even if no one else does." For the first time, the fight felt less about survival and more about legacy. Later, David stood outside the corporate tower where it all began. The glass facade reflected the sky like an unbroken wall. He whispered, "This building tried to erase me." Reporters gathered at the base, waiting. He gripped his notepad, scars of ink etched deep across its pages. He muttered, "But I left a mark they can't wash away." His reflection stared back from the glass doors, haunted, scarred, but alive. He stepped forward, no longer a ghost, but a living reminder of what truth costs. In the evening, David sat with Laura on their balcony, city lights glowing below. She said quietly, "We may never win." He replied, "But we've been heard." She leaned her head on his shoulder, whispering, "That's more than most get." He held her hand tightly, eyes on the skyline. He muttered, "They'll keep fighting to bury me, but I'll keep standing." His voice was steady, carrying no illusion of victory, only the weight of a man who refused to vanish. Alone again, David stood in the dark kitchen, staring at the silent phone on the counter. He whispered, "Erase me all you want. I'll echo louder." He slid Emily's drawing into his folder with the evidence, sealing it shut. The silence was broken only by the hum of the refrigerator, but it felt like the world was holding its breath. He whispered one last time, "It was worth it." The words hung in the air like a final shot fired, lingering long after his voice faded.